this stuff, everything here is essential to understand how to train the lifts. So the goal by the end of this is I want you to have the tools when you leave that you can assess yourself and get better on your own. Now, a lot of people will make Olympic weightlifting way more complicated than it needs to be. And a bit of that is out of self-interest. If you've taken the time to learn them, you've gone through that process, if you make them seem incredibly hard and daunting, then you automatically become more valuable. Like, oh, you have to come to me and you have to do this and dedicate your whole life to lifting. But you don't. There's a progression in there. The only thing that you have to do to get better is A, do it, and then next time do it a little better. But all of the bells and whistles and tips and tricks and all that stuff, it's more sizzle than it is steak. So people will act like they treat it like a martial art. Like you gotta go live with your sensei and do all this other stuff and commit your whole life to it. But in reality, you take people that are great athletes and teach them how to do Olympic weightlifting, and they become great weightlifters. And so from a CrossFit perspective, most of those pieces of the snatch or clean and jerk, you're doing in some other format. So every time that you do a box jump, you're training the Olympic lifts. If you think of the Olympic lifts in context of the other Olympic movements, a better name for them, instead of the snatch or clean and jerk, would be the heavy jump and the double heavy jump. Because that's all you're doing in the Olympic lifts. So we have the high jump, we got the long jump, we got the triple jump. We add a barbell, you have the heavy jump, which is the snatch, you got the double heavy jump, which is the clean and jerk. And almost everything that we do, it revolves around getting better at jumping. All of those cues, all of that assistance work, it always comes down, how do I jump better? The biggest fault every time on the snatch, how do I use my legs? Which is jumping. In the clean and jerk, how do I use my legs instead of rounding at the back, pulling with the back, using my hips? Well, yeah, it's a jump with the barbell. Same thing in the jerk. How do I get my shoulders not to dominate it, not be out of position, get the bar elevated? It's a jump. So when we're in CrossFit, every time you do a box jump, you're training a portion of the lift. Every time you do a kettlebell swing and you're working on your hip hinge, you are mastering that little piece of both movements when you're transitioning past the knees. Every time you do a squat, there's obviously direct carryover to those, but in CrossFit you have all of those pieces. When you do the Olympic lifts, you're just putting those pieces together. Now, if you're starting off and you have all those pieces correctly, learning the lifts is not very hard. It shouldn't take you that much. If you don't have all those pieces, that's where you want to start at. You don't want to start by trying to put this big puzzle together and taking one piece out of the box at a time. You put the things together that are easy to identify. The ones where you can obviously tell the colors, you can tell the shapes. You get all those pieces together so that when you put them together, it's pretty quick. This connects here, I'm done. But if I'm looking at the picture and thinking, all right, let me pull this one little piece out, put it here. Let me look for that other really specific piece out of that pile, put it here. I'm never gonna figure it out. That puzzle's gonna take forever. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna start with the most important stuff and build off of that. So, before we start, we're going to talk a little bit about Fort Smith, Ohio. We're going to start with why we even exercise. Now, people will have a variety of reasons, but for the non-elite athlete, the athlete who's not making a living off of their performance, I forgot to add a little. Sometimes I forget where I learned stuff or where I read it from or heard it from. So I'm going to add a little reading list here at the top. It is always better to go right to the source rather than hear something secondhand. I start, has anyone read the book Dopamine Nation? It is without a doubt the absolute best book that has come out in the last few years. What they've done is they've taken ancient wisdom, stuff that we've known for thousands of years, but broke it down from a neuroscience perspective. So no matter who the person is, they're going to understand those concepts, because you don't need to be a practitioner of Asian philosophy or any of those things to understand what they bring up. And one of the central concepts of the book is balance. That's a part of yin and yang, that's a part of a lot of different cultures. Specifically, this pleasure-pain balance and its relationship to dopamine. Now, most people are thinking of dopamine purely from a pleasure standpoint. But there's a flip side to it, because pleasure and pain is processed in the same part of the brain. You can't see this from where you're at unless you got great vision, but I want you to think of a teeter-totter. You have your big wooden board, and you have your balance point right in the middle. You're at that baseline level. Now, if you introduce either pain or pleasure, it's going to change that balance. The body wants to be balanced. And that's true in basically every system of the body. It is seeking homeostasis. So if I don't exercise, and I flood my brain with these different pleasure chemicals, I become desensitized to that pleasure. And I become more sensitive to the pain aspect. It has to balance each other out. So if I sit down and I have a beer and I watch a bunch of Netflix and I scroll through social media while I watch Netflix and I do all this other stuff that's going to raise that dopamine level, I'm going to be far more sensitive to pain shortly after that. On the flip side, if I introduce something painful to that teeter-totter moves in the opposite part. So I got a short lever on the pain side and a very long lever on the pleasure side. What that means is after a hard workout, it's going to take more pain to experience pain, and it's going to take less pleasure to experience pleasure. This works both short-term and long-term. So anyone who works out in the morning, my least favorite activity in the entire world is waking up early. So it doesn't matter what it is, I'm not waking up early. They'll tell you about how great the rest of the day is if they wake up and get it done first thing in the morning. And anyone that doesn't exercise has no clue what they're talking about. They think they're crazy. Well, often people wrongly reject data if it doesn't fit what they already think. But that is a real phenomenon, and people will repeat it over and over and over again. That phenomenon is real. And this is the explanation of it. That when they finish that workout, they are now less sensitive to pain and more sensitive to pleasure. So when it's really hot outside, and you go drink water, it's the greatest beverage you've ever had. But in the winter, drinking water is a bit of a chore. So it's the exact same activity, but your response to that is because of the different context in there. You're doing the same thing, it should have the same effect, but it doesn't. Because one is in the context of this side of the teeter-totter, where that balance is off. The other one is on the opposite side. It's nice and comfortable today. I'm not real tired. I haven't really exercised. I don't have the need for water. This is kind of a task. Versus it's hot. I'm miserable. I want straight water. I don't even want it cold. I don't want any carbonation. I don't want any of that. Just straight water. So that's the whole reason why you exercise. Because you have two choices. One choice is you pick your pleasure and you load your day with all these different pleasurable activities, and that means you're randomly going to experience pain. different stuff. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you totally lose it. On the flip side, you can choose your pain. You load this teeter-totter up on the side of pain through hard workouts or any other activity. It's just that working out is the most consistent, it's the most steady, it's the easiest that I can know for sure I'm going to get done. And now that this teeter-totter is loaded up on the side of pain, that pleasure has to balance it out. So, something very simple. Your spouse making dinner for you, which previously you may have been like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal. Big whoop, you were at home. I don't understand. You're going to enter that interaction a lot differently. You're going to be far more excited about it. Probably going to be hungrier because you worked out. All of those interactions, your entire day change. Your experience from all of those different activities change. So, when we get down to a very, very fundamental level, which is what we're going to try to do on the lifts, and go all the way back to why we even exercise in the first place, this, to me, is the most important part. This pleasure-pain balance, and the way that it alters your brain. Now, you've already made the decision to exercise, so why weightlifting? Well, it's power. Every other element of the lifts can be accomplished by something easier. So if you're just trying to be stronger, you can choose something simpler to do. If you're just trying to lose some weight, you don't have to do weightlifting. If you just want to build muscle, you don't have to do weightlifting. Weightlifting is unique in its ability to develop power. And if you pass physics class, your power equation is simply work over duration. So I want to do more work in less time, which is exactly the same as every single CrossFit workout. I got a 10-minute workout. I want to do as much as I can in those 10 minutes. The big difference is that we shorten up the duration. This is the shortest duration thing that we're going to do. And that's why it has the biggest impact on power. Now, you can get some of those benefits with various movements, but they will make you a more powerful athlete better than anything else. As long as you take the few steps you have to do to learn them well enough to actually execute. So, our goal today, when you leave here, you are going to think of one movement for each lift. Only one. One movement / one quality that you're going to work on. Not 5 or 10 or not a whole bunch of stuff. You are trying to identify the weak link in that lift. Bringing up that weak link is what's going to make your lift improve the most. So, not only are you not going to get better by spending all this time on something that you're already good at, you're going to get worse. Because if I start adding extra stuff and I'm already good at that thing, there's always a trade-off. Unless you're a full-time weightlifter, someone's covering all the bills, me doing that means I didn't do something else. So if I'm going in and I say, hey, I'm going to practice a little more, but my choice of practice is all the stuff I'm already good at because it's fun, I'm actually not only not improving, I might go backwards because now I'm doing this other stuff even less. Or I'm so tired after doing all the fun stuff that when it comes time to go do work on those things, I'm doing even less than I was before. So if I add in an extra hour during the week, after that hour didn't make me any better because I was already good at those things. That's not why I failed the lift. But then the normal time I was already allocating to it, less of that now is going to go to what I'm bad at. So you are going to identify and focus only on the weak link. Now, in CrossFit, there is a concept called virtuosity. Do you guys remember what it is?
Doing common, uncommon, low.
There we go. Which is a nice, cutesy term, but no one knows what that actually means. So, deliberate practice is virtuosity in action. That is how how you should think of it. So when we use this idea of doing the common uncommonly well, you get to that point through deliberate practice. And there's 7 steps to it. And it's broken down in 3 different ways. The first one, which happens before the workout, is you have to have a mental model. Now, we're going to spend a little extra time going over this stuff, but this is our mental model progression. Right now, all I want you to think about is try to imagine your very first cell phone camera and the quality of picture. That's what you should think about right here. That's our step 1, is a mental model. If you have less experience at something, it's iPhone 1 picture quality. As you develop great experience and you get better at it, that mental model starts to become a little clearer. Your quality is more like an iPhone 14 picture. So we start off with a mental model. 2, we have a clear, specific goal for the session. 1 thing, not 5, only 1. And that 1, ideally, is the single thing that you're worst at of that movement. So we have those 2 before the session. My mental model, which is everything in my head that I can think of for that movement. 2, a clear goal of what I'm trying to get better at. Now, during your workout, there's 3 parts that separate deliberate practice. Number 1 is focus. So if you're scrolling on your phone, if you're multitasking, if you're trying to get a bunch of other stuff done, that's fine for some workouts. But if you're really trying to improve your technique, you have to be able to focus. And that's not anything in particular. You know what helps you focus. So for some people, that means no sound at all, no distractions. For other people, they have what they call the coffee shop effect. They want a little bit of music, they want a little bit of stuff. It kind of distracts, the specific things. They kind of blend in and helps them focus a little bit. Step 4 is you have to be in the growth zone. Now I'm going to go back to this whole reason of why we do Olympic weightlifting in the first place, which is power. You're not building power with a PVC pipe. Now you start off with a PVC pipe because even though you signed a waiver, if you get hurt, it's still the gym's reputation on the line. Now, if you got hurt lifting half a pound of plastic, then you have an argument to say, hey, this person was gonna get hurt no matter what. This person would have got hurt carrying in the groceries. They got hurt with a PVC pipe. But at a certain point, once you know these well enough, you have to actually add some weight to the bar. Your goal is the most amount of work in that duration. So if the work is minimal, well, there's also minimal power. You're not getting better at these things. You're wasting most of your time. If you don't have the confidence to have some, any amount of weight on there, well, just go do box jumps. Go do something else that's not as complicated. So this growth zone means it's got to be hard enough that you're actually getting better and satisfying that power requirement, but not so heavy that you make mistakes simply because it's too hard. Now, for people in CrossFit, that's typically going to be, if you want to use a percentage, that's usually going to be about 70 to 90% of the max, somewhere in there. Less than 70, unless they're really strong and experienced at weightlifting, is just simply not heavy enough. You're now making mistakes in the lift because you can get away with that at 60%, which you couldn't get away with at 80%. Beyond 90, there's days that 90% is absolutely glued to the ground and will not budge. So 90% gives you a buffer that on your worst day, you'll still probably be able to lift. But beyond 90, you're gonna start making mistakes simply because you're tired. Your legs are tired from the previous day. Now that shows up in your lifting because you're not getting the same effect that you're asking of your legs typically. So 7 to 90 is about that growth zone. And fifth, and the most important part, is high quality, immediate feedback. So you perform a rep, you need to know whether that rep is part of this really good, clear mental model or not. So if we're at stage 1, it's a real blurry picture. It can be yourself or it can be a coach. They're gonna compare what you did to what it should be like. And now they can tell you to either make a correction, you did it wrong, or just as importantly, you did it right. If I do it right but I don't know it, that doesn't help me. Because next time I go to do it, I don't know that that's what I should have been doing. So it's not just about picking out the things that you do wrong, it's about refining all those things that you do right and ingraining that into your head so you know that's what it should feel like. Now, after the session, you're going to update that mental model. So I started here. My model's going to be a little bit better. That picture becomes just slightly clearer. And I'm going to reassess. I'm going to have a new, clear, specific goal. It might still be the one that I had prior, but it might not be. I may have solved that issue. I'm good enough now that I don't have to continue working on that. I'm going to work on the next weakest link. And I'm going to work on that until it's no longer holding me back. Then I'm going to work on the next weakest link. So when we look at these steps in here, this is how people start off. Your mental model. Everything that you know about the snatch. All of it. From where your hands go to where your feet go, how the lift feels while you're doing it, what the gym smells like, how the chalk feels on your hand. Every single thing you can think of, you load that into your head before the workout. This orange line represents the focus step. Now, without that orange line, I'm going to perform my reps at that level. So think of a really basic but poor idea of the snatch. First thing most people learn, you're going to get tall, you're going to get small. That's what this first one is. That's it. Pick the bar up, get tall, get small under it, stand up. Now, if I just mindlessly go through my reps, I don't have any focus, that's what they're going to look like. But if I'm focused on one thing, and only one thing, my technique is just going to be slightly better for that session. Now, I can't think of 5 things and get to this point in one day, but during that session, my focus is that orange line. I'm slightly better at it. Now, the point of this immediate high quality feedback is that when I do it right, I need to memorize what that feels like. So I update my mental model. The next workout, that thing that I was working on, I have it down. I memorized it. I know exactly what it's supposed to be like. And I work on the next thing in here. Now, that feedback can either come from a coach, it can also come from yourself. What you can see in the lift is often far more than what you feel at first. Like you can watch a lift and know, hey, I messed this up, I messed that up, I didn't do this right. But when you go to do it, your mental model of actually doing it is a little different. So a coach can give it to you, you can coach yourself, record it, video it, see what you're doing wrong, but you need this element no matter what. That's what separates deliberate practice. So now, on my next workout, I have that one thing memorized, I updated my mental model, I moved on to the next one. That's the technique that I'm using for that next session. Same thing, I receive feedback on it, I memorize it, now it's at number 3. Same process, number 4. So I went from just, I get tall, I get small, to now I have all the little pieces there. I got my grip in a better spot. I have my stance in a better spot. My timing on the bar is a little better. My balance is a little better. This was, you don't want anyone watching. This was, okay, it's not that bad. That's fine. Now, where virtuosity comes in is that people often think that they're gonna go continue learning something new. There's nothing new to learn. When you get to this point here, where it's not that bad, there's nothing new to learn. It's all the same stuff, but better. So I'm returning back to the same thing that I was working on and being a little bit better at that. And that's simple stuff. When I pick the bar up and I pass the knees, maybe I shift too much on my heels. I'm rocking back and forth. Which at first we had too many other things to fix. There was all kinds of stuff to worry about. We're not gonna get nitpicky about that. But I fixed those. Now I go back to those fundamentals. I execute them at a higher level. We're worried about getting that weight shift a tiny bit better. And we continue that process over and over and over and over and over again. This is stage 100. Now we're getting really nitpicky. Now I'm thinking about the tiniest parts of those fundamentals to get better at. So everyone here today has a slightly different mental model in their head. We're all at different levels. But the process of improvement is exactly the same. It starts off, as we warm up, you're gonna think about everything you know about the snatch. You're gonna have an idea. Everyone here probably has an idea of what they need to work on. So you're gonna have a goal. Throughout the session, you're gonna focus and think about what you're trying to improve. We're gonna actually lift some weight. It's the whole not getting better lifting PVC pipes. Now, we will go slow enough that we can watch almost every rep. And then once you finish, you're gonna update that mental model and you're gonna think about what is that thing that I need to improve the most on. Now, as we go through these progressions, this is a key distinction between accessory work versus skill work. Your skill work, if you think of the whole snatch like a timeline, all of these movements in here are some piece of that timeline. So our tall snatch, if you don't know what that is, that's fine, we're gonna learn it today. That's the second half of the snatch. So as you perform that tall snatch, you're not thinking I'm doing some other thing to get myself stronger to carry over the snatch. No, I'm doing the snatch. It's the same fundamentals. I'm doing exactly the same thing I would do on a max snatch, but I don't have to do all this other stuff ahead of time. So now I can focus on this piece. And if I improve this piece, it'll get better when I do the full movement. That's different than something like a back squat. When I back squat, I'm just trying to get stronger. I'm not thinking this is exactly how I snatch. This is exactly how I squat and move in the snatch. And so there's a slight difference in there. As you perform these movements, I want you to remember that they are all one piece of that full snatch timeline. So if something feels really awkward, if something feels really weird, you know right away, hey, that's what I gotta work on. When I leave here, I already know what I gotta do, because that one seemed impossible, which it shouldn't if you can snatch. That means you're doing some other movement besides a snatch. So keep that in your mind as we go through this. Each of these is a piece of the full snatch timeline, not a separate accessory movement to get stronger. Perfect. We're all gonna grab a PVC pipe. We are not doing a general warm-up today because you got too long to move. And we got plenty of time just on the overhead squat and the muscle snatch to get warm. And if we do this long warm-up, A, you're not gonna be any more prepared to lift, but you will be more tired. So, when you got that much lifting to do, you have to manage your fatigue. You're not going to do this big, long, giant 30-minute warm-up and get your heart rate through the roof. Because by the time we actually get heavy, you're going to be wiped out. We're going to do each one of these beginning from step 1. That is your warm-up.